Thank you for taking time today to go through ProDiesel do's and don'ts. A little housekeeping. First, you can speed through any of these sections by just clicking through these. These are just like a PowerPoint, so you don't have to wait till I'm done talking. And today we're going to cover in this first section some common information, and then we'll get into the meat, the cat, and international information. ProDiesel has been in business for over 60 years now. We are the largest aftermarket remanufacturer of injectors in the country. We build them right here in the good old USA in Nashville, Tennessee. You might ask yourself, why ProDiesel? Well, here are a list of a few. We're an OE quality remanufacturer at competitive pricing. We put new tips in most Cat, Cummins Selects, and Detroit injectors. We offer less downtime because we can get it to you the same day or the next day to most of the country. We offer a check and advise program. We'll test your injectors and see which ones are bad for a nominal fee. We're ISO 9001, 14001 certified. 14001 certification is the EPA side of it. We're just that good on the ecology as well. And we offer the industry-leading ProVantage warranty of 18 months, fault-free, no questions asked, across-the-counter warranty. Thank you for choosing ProDiesel for your remanufactured injector needs. If you believe you have a problem with one of our injectors, please call us first before you take it out or you take it back to the distributor. We would like to talk to you about it, see if we can help figure out what's wrong, see if we can help you diagnose what the issue may be, and if you do have a problem with one of our injectors and it is proven to be one of our issues, we want to start that warranty process so it's simpler and easier for the distributor when you get it back. Also remember that 6 injectors do not fail at the same time. We know through the law of averages that with our injector failure rates as low as what they are, you would be more likely to win the lottery than you would to have 6 injectors fail at the same time. If for some odd reason you do have a problem and you're out of the state that you purchased them or however that works, because these trucks go down the line, we do have an out-of-state policy available on our website that you can look at as well. One thing we know as an industry is 57% of all trucks on the road today have fault codes. When it leaves the lot, so does $440 worth of repairs. That's $220 in labor, $220 in parts. How to avoid this? Scan the truck on intake and scan the truck after completed. That gives you a full and proper diagnosis because that is key to making sure we diagnose what's wrong with the truck, getting to the root cause of the problem, and making sure that we're replacing injectors when they need it, not when they're not, and also if we replace them, that we've solved the issue that caused the first set to fail. Speaking about why did they fail, what is the root cause? Is it fuel? Is it electronic? Is it mechanical? Or was it a human error? A retired 40-year veteran of Detroit diesel warranty said the most obvious part of failure is not usually the probable cause. Why do injectors fail right out of the box? Well, 65% of all our ProVantage warranty returns are non-injector related issues. First of all, contamination. Second, O-ring damage. They're either cut, pinched, or rolled. They were improperly diagnosed, or it's an inherent OEM injection design failure. I always like to say a Yugo's a Yugo. We can only make it so good, it's still just a poorly designed injector. We can't change the design of that injector. So 3 of these are preventable during installation, and that's what we want to talk about today. What makes up the 65% of returns that we get back for warranty purposes that are not injector failures? 60% of that 65% is contamination. Under that, let's talk about storage. Do you buy your fuel in bulk? Is it a reliable source? Is it the right type of fuel, highway or off highway? And are you putting the proper additives in it for that time of the year? Particulates. It's critical to remove these things through filtering. We have a 5-micron tip in some of the electronic fuel injectors today. That's just a piece of dust. It takes 20,000 microns to equal an inch. Do you have water or microbes and sludge in there? Prevention is the most important part to keeping fuel-related issues out. A few questions to ask yourself. Have you checked your tanks lately? When was the last time your fuel was tested? Is it on a regular scheduled maintenance program? What can you expect if the fuel is bad? Have you checked for microbes? And which one is best for you, mechanical or chemical solutions to keep your fuel up clean and up to date? And can you do it yourself, or do you need to hire someone? It cannot be stated enough that filter is the only way to make sure you get good peak performance out of your injectors. Number 2 on our list of non-injector related failures is damaged injector O-rings, which make up another 35% of the returns we get back. This happens during installation, and is most common on the back cylinders with a cut, rolled, or flattened O-ring. We also get them from combustion heat, which results in fuel leaking into the engine or compression gases in return fuel. Anytime you take an injector out, you need to make sure that you replace the O-rings. Don't reuse the O-rings. And you should use a thin coat of ethylene glycol or petroleum jelly when you do the installation to keep them lubricated as they go in, so they do not take it, reduces the risk of getting cut. Make sure that they are properly seated as well. You don't want them out of alignment one way or the other. It will flatten the O-rings and cause the other issues. The next in our list is just some common installation issues or misdiagnosis. It makes up the last 5% of our returns. Starting with not checking the wiring harness. A bad harness will equal misfires, and you'll assume that it's an injector. And when you replace the injector, you'll have the same problem. We get those back, and somebody ends up changing a wiring harness. Guess what? They fixed the issue, and it must have been the injector. No, it was the wiring harness to begin with. Clean or replace the injector tubes. That will cause them, if they're bad, will cause the injectors to leak or get blow-by. Checking the electrical grounding. Poor ground will give you misfires as well. On Cummins, the N14, M11, and L10, there's a bad part number. The 30-3682 is a bad part number. It causes misfires itself. So you need to replace that with a new updated version. And on Cat C7s, the fuel pumps, Caterpillar requires you to change those, or requests that you change those every 150,000 miles. They tend to just disintegrate themselves, throw metal contaminants into the fuel system, and you're going to clog injectors. I like to say that fuel injectors are the most expensive fuel filter you'll ever buy. Continuing with our common installation issues, you need to check your fuel equalizer. Make sure the breather is not plugged or frozen. Check your fuel pressure. Make sure that it meets OEM specs. Low fuel pressure causes issues. Use diagnostic software. OE or qualified aftermarket. Make sure it's up to date. Proper connections. I used to sell diagnostic software, and I can tell you, if you don't use the right connectors, you get really strange information. Make sure you have the right adapter that goes along with it, so you're getting the right signal coming off of the truck. When applicable, set the trim codes. The CD is included in everything that you need with our injectors. We use the OEM trim codes if you need them. If a CD is not in there, you don't need to set the trim codes. The key here is to make sure that you're finding the root cause. That's why we get a lot of these back. People don't find the root cause when they install the injector, because the first one failed for a reason. Let's make sure that we don't put an injector back in a system that's going to fail it. Please remember, it is critically important that you find the root cause before replacing the injectors. What caused the injector to fail the first time? Was it contamination? Was it just wore out? Was there an electrical problem? You must find out why the first ones failed. Once you figure that out, you can fix that problem as well as replace the injector. The problem is if you don't, you will have premature failure on the next set of injectors because the problem's still there. For our next segment, we'll get into a little bit of injector technical training. We'll cover a little bit of diagnostics, some identification, talk about how we can ensure the proper functioning, and how to manage the core. Here you can see a list of injector failure modes. We'll not go into detail about each one of those. There's a separate presentation. It's called a Common Injector Failures and Why, listed on this website. Let's talk about trim codes. Only certain engines from Detroit or Caterpillar need those. Normally Caterpillar C7 and C9s, and not all of those engines in that platform need trim codes installed at the time. You will need OEM software or Cojali software to be able to do that. This must be done at the time of installation in order to have the engine run properly right out of the gate. If you need the CD, we will include it in the injector box. If you don't, we won't. Basically, if you get a CD, you're going to have to install the trim codes. If you don't need the trim code. That's just how we know which ones need it and which ones don't. Let's go into some CAT electronic injector installation and removal procedures. First of all, start by disconnecting the harness assembly. Mark the bridge assemblies and the injectors for reference during replacement. Each injector must be reinstalled in the original sleeve. Remove the bridge assemblies. Remove the bolt, spacer, and clamp holding the injector in place. Inspect the hold down assembly. If the bolt is not loose during the disassembly, then use tooling to pry beneath the base and free the injector. Remove the injector from the cylinder head and inspect the injector bore for debris and sign of wear. As you install or replace the injector, remember to replace the clamp and spacer. Be sure to replace the injector hold down bolt with a new bolt. Clean the engine, internal fuel lines, and injector sleeve before replacing the injector. Install a new fuel filter and flush the lines. Please remember to do this. Again, injectors make very expensive fuel filters. If you don't clean and flush the fuel and change the fuel filter, you are almost guaranteed to clog that brand new injector that you took so much time and energy to put in. Use the OEM service manual instructions for servicing or replacing the injector cylinder head sleeves. Before installing the injector, apply clean oil on the O-ring seals to prevent possible O-ring damage. Do not strike, hit, or hammer the injector before or after installation. International HEUI injectors have a common problem of a split tip failure. The reason for this is you've either got low fuel pressure, you've got air in the fuel. Understand that fuel provides a hydraulic cushion between the valve and the valve body. Dry starts can and do result in hard striking of the valve, causing the tip to split. Understand that split tips will happen no matter what brand if these conditions exist. So whether it's ProDiesel, whether it's an OE or whatever, you will split the tip on your injector if you do not make sure that there's good fuel supply. Some things you can do to prevent split tip failures. Prime the engine before starting. Operate the engine with proper fuel pressure. If you have excessive fuel inlet restrictions, a maximum of 6 inches of mercury at high idle, you need to replace the fuel filter, clean the fuel strainer, check the lift pump and overflow valve. Make sure you don't have air in the fuel. This can occur in the suction side of the fuel system, the lift pump, loom clamps, fittings. Make sure you've tested and checked all of that. Or when you start up and you have air in your fuel, you will split the tips. Let's go over some common practices. Before installing replacement injectors, determine the root cause of the failure. Correct any possible contamination issues. Metal from a failed high pressure pump, poor fuel handling. Flush the system before installing and running the replacement injectors. Please do not remove the injector from its protective packaging until ready to install. This will reduce the likelihood of contamination or external damage. We're not talking about common rail injectors here, but they have a 5-micron hole in the tip. That will clog with a piece of dust. So it's almost like sterile technique for nurses. You guys have to be really good about keeping your hands clean, flushing the fuel system, making sure you've got new clean filters in it. Do all that before you put a new set of injectors in. Make sure your injector has the best opportunity to start off right. Install the trim codes from the CD-ROM if it's required. Prevent injector plunger spring failure. Prime the fuel system before you start the engine. And please, deviating from the OEM recommendations can result in premature injector failure as well. Let's go ahead and talk about how you handle your core. Getting that core back to us, getting the credit for it is important to you and important to us. If the tip's blown off, if the spring's busted, for whatever reason, we need the body of that injector back. So please put it back in the Ziploc bag that's in your box that you just purchased ProDiesel injector from and send that back to us. We'll give you credit for that, no problem. Second of all, if you have any comments about this PowerPoint presentation, please feel free to email me. My email's at the bottom of the screen there. And last and most importantly, thank you for choosing ProDiesel. We appreciate your business.